Ever feel like, you just need to like disappear behind a digital wall sometimes, kind of like hide from all the chaos?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're looking at today. Like, what makes someone take that to the extreme? You know what I mean? We're diving into the mind of a hacker this time, Elliot Alderson from Mr. Robot.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, before anyone freaks out, we are not condoning cybercrime. The point is, Elliot's a great case study. He kind of embodies that classic hacker archetype,
Right, right.
but it lets us dig into the Enneagram Type 5, the investigator, specifically the conservation subtype.
Okay, yeah.
And that's where it gets really interesting, I think.
See, to me, that's what's so cool about this. You've got this character, Elliot, who totally nails that whole hacker image. But instead of just like, ooh, hacking is cool, we're
Yeah.
going to analyze it. It's not even really about the skills. It's about the deeper stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That need for knowledge
Hmm.
and control that can drive someone to those lengths.
It's like why they do it, not how, which is way more interesting to me.
Way more.
So, okay, for anyone who's new to the Enneagram thing,
Yeah.
quick recap. It's basically a system of personality types, each with its own quirks.
Right.
And our guy, Elliot, textbook type 5, it seems.
Oh, he's almost too perfect. They wrote the type 5 description based on him. The conservation subtype especially is about creating order in a world that just feels chaotic, right? Like they build this internal bunker and their survival kit.
And that totally fits with Elliot's whole vibe, right? Like even his apartment, it's so minimalist. It's practically a server farm with a cot. Most people, they're all about throw pillows. He's got hard drives stacked up.
Exactly. And see, that's not just a quirky detail for TV. That's conservation subtype in action. They minimize their needs, not because they're boring, but because every want, every desire, that's a vulnerability.
So less stuff, less problems.
Less to lose, less to worry about. It's strategic.
So it's not so much about like Spartan living as it is about, what did you call it? Strategic independence.
There you go. He controls his environment down to the last bite.
Yeah.
Makes sense when you think about it, right? Digital control, that's his whole thing.
And that's where it gets really fascinating.
Totally.
Because that desire for control, it's not just about like power trips or whatever, right? It comes from somewhere.
It comes from this deep-seated fear of being overwhelmed, of being controlled themselves. Knowledge is power for Elliot, sure, but it's also a shield.
So he's not just hacking systems, he's like hacking his own anxieties.
Exactly.
That's kind of brilliant when you think about it, but also kind of sad, honestly.
It's a double-edged sword, for sure. But it's key to understanding the Type 5, right? They retreat into their minds, their expertise, because that's their safe place.
Which explains why Elliot's such a master of the digital world, right? The logic of code, the predictability of ones and zeros, it's comfort food for the brain.
Yeah.
Especially when the real world feels, well...
Messy.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the catch, and this is important. While that retreat can be a strength, it can also lead to isolation. And that's a whole other layer we see playing out, even with people Elliot's close to.
Yeah, like Darlene, his sister.
Just
They're
because-
close, but there's always this wall up?
There is. And that's where we start to see what that self-preservation through the limitation really costs. Minimize your needs, keep everyone at arm's length. Yeah. You risk missing out on real connection.
So it's more than just a personality type, right? It's about how someone like Elliot moves through the world, their strengths, their struggles. It all comes back to this need for control, for independence.
Exactly. And that's why looking at Elliot's story through this lens, this Enneagram Type 5 conservation subtype, it's illuminating.
Yeah.
It's not just about a fictional character. It's about seeing those patterns in ourselves and the people around us.
Which brings us to the heart of today's deep dive. How does understanding the Type 5, their motivations, their anxieties, how does that help us understand what Elliot does, his actions? And, let's be real, how does his story shed light on that balance we all struggle with, independence versus connection? 'Cause, come on, we all feel that sometimes, right? So we've kind of figured out Elliot's great at building those digital walls, right? But when it comes to the real world, connecting with people, whole different story.
Yeah.
Like, how does someone like that even function, in a world that's all about opening up, sharing everything online?
$1 million question, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, I think Elliot shows some really interesting stuff. Think about his relationship with Darlene, his sister.
Oh, yeah.
Clearly cares about her, but that wall's always there.
Oh, totally. Like, there's that scene, right? She's trying to connect with them after something intense goes down, and he just shuts down. Emotionally, I mean, it's rough to watch, but you can practically see that need for control taking over.
There it is, yeah. He pulls back, goes inside his head, because that's the safe place. defense mechanism, for sure. Yeah. But it also shows something super important about the conservation subtype.
Which is?
Thinking as sanctuary. That's how they operate.
Thinking as sanctuary. Okay, that sounds way less intense than my brain is a panic room, but I think I get it.
Right. But it's true, though. Think about it for Elliot. His brain is everything. Analyzing, strategizing, that's his safe space, right? Is how he dissects problems, figures out what's going to happen, creates order.
Out of chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The world's chaotic, but his brain isn't.
And you see that in how he hacks, too, don't you?
Absolutely.
The way he breaks down systems, finds those weak points.
It's all about knowing the rules, right? So he can't be surprised, can't be controlled.
Which makes his whole take down evil core thing even more interesting. Because on the surface, it's like, yeah, fight the man.
Right.
But isn't he kind of trying to exert control in his own way?
Now you're getting it. That's what makes the type 5 so complex, you know? It's rarely simple, good guy, bad guy, all that.
Right.
They want independence, autonomy, yeah. But how they go after it,
yeah,
sometimes it's kind of contradictory.
So not so black and white, huh? There's layers to it.
Layers, yeah. See, Elliot wanting to dismantle evil core, there's a sense of justice there, sure. But it's also about him taking control, right? A world that feels uncontrollable to him. He's fighting back against that.
Begins feeling powerless, like he's at the mercy of something he doesn't understand.
Exactly. It's like he's trying to hack the whole system, not just for everyone else, but for himself too.
So he can feel safe.
There you go. And that brings us to another biggie with type 5, the conservation subtype.
Fear of invasion. Okay, hold on. We're not talking about someone breaking into his apartment.
No, not like that. This is deeper, more existential. It's about being overwhelmed, having their boundaries crossed.
Independence threatened.
Bingo. Remember how paranoid Elliot is? Being watched, tracked, that's that fear, amplified.
Makes sense. If your whole identity is about control, self-sufficiency, any threat to that's got to be terrifying.
Right. And it shows up in so many ways, not just the paranoia. The way he values his privacy, hesitates to get close to people. Distance, right. Physically, emotionally, it's protection from that invasion.
So it's all connected then. Needing control, retreating into knowledge, this fear of invasion, it all comes back to feeling safe, feeling capable in a world that's often just too much.
Exactly. And listen, those strategies, they work short term, maybe, but there's a cost. And that's what makes Elliot's story so powerful.
Yeah.
You know, it's a cautionary tale.
About isolating yourself, letting that fear of being vulnerable make your choices for you.
There you go. So the question is, how do we find that balance?
Yeah.
Because let's be real, we all feel those anxieties sometimes.
Even if we're not, taking down corporations on the side.
Yeah. What can we learn from Elliot? From where he stumbles even?
It's a good question. What stands out to you from everything we've talked about?
Yeah, what resonates?
I gotta say, that fear of invasion thing, it hits home.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like the spying on me through my phone kind of way, but just, that feeling when you're just bombarded with expectations all the time, like the demands of just existing these days. It's a lot.
It's a lot. So I get it, Why someone like Elliot would just want to retreat, build those walls up just to cope.
Oh, absolutely. It's a natural human instinct, isn't it? When you feel overwhelmed, you seek shelter.
Right.
But the key is, like we've been saying, finding that balance.
Yeah.
Because for some people, maybe it IS tech, like with Elliot, or mastering some skill, finding that one thing.
Right.
But for others, it might be something else entirely, right? It could be creative stuff, being in nature, even just, meditation, quieting the mind a little.
Yeah, it's about finding what lets you recharge, that control, feeling safe, but without going totally off the grid.
Exactly. Because you can't just disconnect.
It's tricky, though, right? Like finding that balance. Because Elliot, he kind of loses it, doesn't he? He does. And that's the thing about any personality type, really, isn't it? When you get so stuck in your ways, the defenses, you forget there's a bigger picture out there.
Yeah.
That we need people.
We do.
That connection, it matters.
Which I think brings us to the real heart of what Elliot's going through. And maybe this is a question for everyone listening,
Like this.
In a world that's like hyper-connected all the time, how do we balance that? The need to know, to be in control, with the fact that we need each other. Like, how do we build those bridges instead of just more walls?
Right, because it's not one or the other, is it? It's both.
It'd be both, yeah.
It's like, how do we honor that independence, that need for control, but not cut ourselves off from, from what makes us human?
From other humans.
Exactly. And that's, honestly, that's something I think about a lot, Even outside Mr. Robot, it's real.
Yeah, it's everyone's problem now, isn't it?
Totally. It's that pull, right?
Right.
Retreat into your head where it's safe.
Yeah.
Or deal with. Well, people.
And it's messy.
It is. Relationships, they're unpredictable, they're challenging, but
If they're worth it.
they're so worth it.
Even with someone like Elliot, as guarded as he is, you still see it, right? Those little moments where he wants that connection.
Oh, yeah, those glimmers are so important because it reminds us, no matter how independent we want to be, we're wired for this stuff, to
And
connect.
we're social creatures, whether we like it or not.
We are. And it's those connections, those moments of honestly vulnerability, shared experience, that's where we really, truly thrive, I think.
Or we figure out who we are.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, into the hacker mind, this type 5, all that, here's what I want to leave you with.
Okay.
Was one tiny thing, just one small step you could do today to bridge that gap between your inner world and the world out there.
I love that.
Could be a text to a friend, a genuine compliment to someone you don't even know that well. Just be present, in a conversation.
Because at the end of the day, it's those little things, those moments of real connection. That's what makes the difference.
That's it. That's the good stuff.
That's the good stuff.